The universe will come to an end in anywhere between 2.8 and 22 billion years. Our lives will come to an end, at the most, a century from now. We have been in this universe for an infinitesimal fraction of its existence, and our contribution to the fate of the universe has ultimately been meaningless. Our actions, such as razing forests to the ground, burning fossil fuels at an unsustainable rate, and polluting rivers and oceans, may have all destroyed Earth. But ultimately, even the destruction of the Earth is insignificant. The universe contains more than 700 quintillion planets. What difference will one make? In fact, this planet itself contains over 8.7 million species. What difference will you and I make? And even if by some miracle we do manage to make a difference, it will amount to nothing because existence is temporary. The universe will eventually come to an end. Although the scientific community remains divided over how exactly this would happen, whether galaxies will be torn apart from each other, or the universe will collapse in on itself, or maybe energy will almost cease to exist, resulting in the big freeze as temperatures approach absolute zero. The one thing that theoretical physicists can agree on, however, is the impermanent nature of existence. And if all existence is impermanent, then whatever impact that we will have will ultimately cease to make a difference. In other words, our lives would have amounted to nothing. Our existence would have been meaningless. As the idea that life was meaningless began to sink in, a growing sense of dread and melancholy began to fester inside of me. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I had stumbled across the idea of existential nihilism, which is something that philosophers and writers have pondered for centuries. For instance, in his play Macbeth, Shakespeare summarized the view of the nihilist through a monologue performed by Macbeth near the end of the play, after he learns of the death of his wife. Macbeth says, "Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Philosopher William Irwin further argued that Darwin's theory of evolution is also compatible with the idea of existential nihilism. After all, biologically speaking, the only purpose of individuals within a species is to survive and therefore reproduce, thereby ensuring the continuity of a species. Thus, our existence is explained by a cause rather than a purpose. In Irwin's own words, therefore, evolution is not teleological. Our existence doesn't seem to serve a greater purpose here on Earth. We're just sort of here. To quote Bill Bryson, we have become so used to the notion of our own inevitability as life's dominant species that it is hard to grasp that we are here only because of timely extraterrestrial bangs and other random flukes. So, as my initial sense of dread began, but in spite of this seemingly insurmountable evidence that life was meaningless, there was still a small part of me that obstinately refused to accept this notion. So, as my initial sense of dread began to abate, I resolved to find out what life's purpose truly was. I began my voyage of self-discovery by consulting my mom, someone who had enjoyed considerable success even from early on in her life, only to realize that the pursuit of goal after goal leads nowhere, for there is always another mountain to scale, another obstacle to overcome. In pursuit of our goals, we invariably lose sight of the present moment, delay happiness, postpone it for the future. So as I asked her what she thought our purpose in life was, she momentarily went silent. After a while, rather tentatively, she replied, "I think life is about living in the present moment, to appreciate the little things, the serene sunset, the soft chirp of crickets at dawn, the gentle caress of the wind. To be content and to cherish those fleeting moments of happiness. That's what life is about." At first, this suggestion seemed reasonable. After all, if our existence is inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, then we might as well enjoy life while we're here. But lurking in the deep chasms of my mind, one thought kept nagging at me persistently. There was one scenario, one phenomenon that this belief could not explain. Martyrdom. If life was about living in the present moment, Why then did people devote their entire lives fighting for others, fighting for a future they might not live to see, facing the relentless struggles and hardships that life throws at them day after day, merely to serve the interests of others? Why? It all seemed so daft. Faced with an endless barrage of questions, I turned then to someone who had lived his life for others. Perennially altruistic, someone who gave with open arms, even when he had so little. Someone I've looked up to my entire life. My grandfather. He explained to me how Mother Nature has given us, here on earth, everything that we could possibly need. In spite of this, the world is full of suffering. It is our duty, therefore, to play our part by giving back. If we can change others' lives for the better, sort of have a net positive effect on this world, then we would have fulfilled our purpose. This train of thought, however, led me back to where I had started. For the temporary nature of existence makes suffering futile. For any fruits that suffering bears would be rendered meaningless by the fleetingness of existence. These were the very ideas that had given birth to my nihilistic beliefs in the first place. In his book, Will to Power, German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explains that this very realization, coming to understand that suffering is meaningless, is what leads people to believe in nihilism in the first place. He famously wrote, "Nihilism appears at that point not that the displeasure at existence has become greater than before, but because one has come to mistrust any meaning in suffering, indeed in existence." This realization frustrated me greatly. I had failed to find any plausible theory which offered even an inkling of hope that life had any purpose at all. For the belief that we should simply live in the present moment, the issue of martyrdom appeared. For the belief that our purpose in life is to help those in need, the temporary nature of existence effectively made any sacrifice, any impact that we had meaningless. This led me to surmise that perhaps I had to look inward to find the answer. Perhaps I had always possessed the ever-elusive answer to my question, and it was only a matter of self-reflection. Self-reflection upon which I came to the realization that perhaps what I was doing right here, trying to discern the meaning of life, maybe this was what life was really about. Maybe our very purpose, in other words, is trying to find purpose. This answer, however, felt like a cop-out, for what use was dedicating your entire life to finding purpose, only to pass away just as you discover your newfound purpose, without having had the opportunity to fulfill it? No, this was not the right answer. My desire to find an answer that I'd agree with remained insatiated, as I grew increasingly frustrated, with my search seeming futile. As I reflected on my findings, my conviction that life was meaningless began to grow further still. However, out of the bottomless pit of misery that I found myself in, a glimmer of hope emerged. For I realized that in spite of my nihilistic beliefs, my desire and motivation to do the things that I normally did had not receded. Funnily enough, life hadn't seemed pointless and devoid of meaning, even though I knew it was. The reason I didn't feel utterly devoid of meaning, in spite of my belief that life was meaningless, was because of a reason that seemed vehemently contradictory on the surface, but upon further introspection made perfect sense. For it dawned upon me in a moment of enlightenment that life was indeed meaningless. Unlike before, I wholeheartedly accepted it now because of what it represented. The simple act of accepting this fact paradoxically meant that my life could mean anything that I wanted it to. The famous martial artist Bruce Lee once said, though in a different context, "The usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness." I believe this is a perfect analogy for our purpose in life. Since life inherently has no meaning, it is analogous to an empty cup, which can then be filled with whatever you want. In other words, life can be enriched with whatever meaning that we choose to enrich it with. In this way, the belief that life is meaningless is ultimately empowering. It is liberating. It is freeing. For it allows us to form our own meaning without any judgment of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. In a similar vein, Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who has in many ways pioneered the philosophy of existential nihilism, once declared, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." This is a message that personally resonates with me because, like many of you, I'm at a juncture in my life where I have to decide my career, or at the very least, what degree I might want to pursue at university. Since I had performed well academically my whole life, as per the nomination society, I should have become a doctor or an engineer by taking the science stream. Uh, Become a doctor or an engineer, get paid a decent salary, earn everyone's respect, settle down. You get the idea. For the longest time, I've been contemplating doing exactly that, mindlessly trotting on the already well worn path that society has laid out for us. That is, until Nietzsche's words came flooding back to me, echoed in my mind. All of a sudden, I was gripped with a feeling of assuredness and resolve. A newfound determination to chase my dreams irrespective of where my decision will lead me, irrespective of whether my life will disintegrate into complete pandemonium or transform into paradise. I can't see the future, but I can act here and now and stay true to myself. Two roads diverged on a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by. Thank you.